Okay, come on, folks. I have standards. They're not very high, but they are mine. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. By way of introduction, my name is Paul. I am a retired naval aviator. I have over 1,000 carrier landings on 9 different carriers, so this is not my first rodeo. To put this in a little bit of perspective, we're going to start out with a few dimensions. That white line to that white line, that's my runway width, which is 80 feet. Not much. Most of your front yard is probably bigger than that. But some of the aircraft we land out here, that one in particular, has a wingspan of 76 feet. So when he lands and he puts his nose right here, his wing is right there. And those aircraft are there, so are these, and more on the bow. We're operational. We have about 69 aircraft on the ship. Only 25 fit on the hangar deck. So the rest up here, and they're always in the way. Now the aircraft that I flew out here, there's 7 different airplanes on the ship that I flew at one time or another. All of them small, agile, nice planes. But even though I'm a little guy, I'm still going to be on this line. The problem is the more offset, or the more often we are offset, the more stress we're putting on one side of the equipment that stops us than the other. That creates a maintenance issue. Maintenance on this gear is not simple. If we have to pull one system, we're looking at 20 sailors in a day and a half. And we're without that system for that day and a half. So get on this line. Now that gets a little challenging. Here's the ship moving through the water. My runway is canted 13 degrees to the left. So when I am landing, my ship is not going straight. It's actually going left to right. So my runway line is going left to right too, and I need to compensate for that all the way down during the approach. First few times you do it, it's a little disconcerting. After 10 or 12 landings, you don't even realize you're doing it. It's just a very natural maneuver. Now the stern of the ship up here in the flight deck we call a ramp. This is the crotch of the deck. That's my runway length. 680 feet long. Again, not much. Most Air Force bases are 12,000 feet. We get away with 680 because we have a tail hook. And this F4 behind me, we have its hook in the down position, so if you want to go up and take a look at it, you'll see what that hook actually looks like. Now, do I have any pilots in here? Anybody fly anything? So I can say anything I want, right? I'm good. Okay, when we land on the field, it's completely different than when we land here. When we land on the field, we land like every other pilot does. You fly over the threshold, use the power bag, let the airplane settle down, flare it to a nice gentle touch. In our aircraft, we can hold the nose off, which is called aerodynamic braking. It really isn't worth anything, but it looks cool and it's fun. And you go down the runway, let the nose fall through, and you finish your landing. If I did that here, I would not have a successful landing. The flare is what kills it out here. We have to drive it into the deck, so we do what's called a constant attitude approach. That airplane stays like this, crash, no flaring. We call it a control crash. We actually land at 12 feet per second sink rate. Navy aircraft, tactical aircraft, the struts, the wheels are beefed up to take this high impact landing. If I landed an Air Force airplane out here the way we do, the wheels would collapse. Just not built to take that, but that's what gives us the ability to land in a very precise spot, and I'll tell you how that's going to work in a minute. Okay, now the other half of the equation that stops us, we have a cable back here. We used to have all 80 feet of it out there, so you authenticity, but we found out the hard way that a black cable and a black neck and a teenager texting was a lethal combination over there. Lots of braces, teeth, noses, not cool. So we took it off and painted a line. I don't know why they give me one of these things. I'm not important enough to have a radio. Okay. But that cable is officially, if it's cross-deck pendant or CDP, but everybody in the Navy knows it as the wire. The wire's 1.5 inches in diameter. It'll take 205,000 pounds of tensile strength. It's made out of very, very soft, stranded, flexible steel. We don't want to crip it when we pick it up. We actually pack a core of grease down the center of it to lubricate it, because every landing we do stretch it slightly, and we don't want to overheat it. We're allowed 100 landings on a wire. When we get the 100th landing, we take it off the deck, we put another one down, and we can do that in 2 minutes. Now to help us pick up the wire, you can see where the number 3 wire is. Some yellow circles all along where the wire is. Now again, we took it off because it's a trip hazard for you guys, but if we were flying between those 2 circles, you'd see a piece of steel spring bowed up like a leaf spring in a car. That one is 7.5 inches. So the wire sits on top of that. So we'll hold the wire up. Here, where I'm concerned, it's still 2 inches off the deck. So the wire up 2 and my hook short of it, I will pick it up. 340 feet later, up the deck, I will be at a full stop. It doesn't matter what airplane, how much I weigh, how fast I am. All of those variables are accounted for down below. We're the people that are manning the equipment that stops us. So we all stop 340 feet. We call it constant run out gear. Now for touchdown to full stop is 2.5 seconds. It puts 3.5 to 4 lateral G's on our body. Trust me, Disney's got rides that have got more than that. But some of the aircraft that we used to land out here weighed 40,000 pounds. Landed at 160-ish, and we stopped them in 2.5 seconds. That's a lot of energy that's got to be absorbed without breaking the airplane or breaking the wire. The way we do that, over there where the wire goes underneath the flight deck, on each side there's another 700 feet of cable, both sides, reeving through what we call an arresting gear engine, which is nothing more than 18 pulleys and a sled. Now I'm going to stop there on that because it's all just engineering and most people don't care. However, if I do have any nerds in here and you want to find out how it works, come on up after and ask me. I have no idea, but I can sound like a genius. You'll think I know everything about it. Actually, when I was flying, I had no idea. I didn't care as long as it stopped me. But when they made us docents out here, we had to learn all this stuff. So now I know how it works, and it's pretty cool. Okay, touchdown point. We have 3 wires, 40 feet between them. So the distance between number 1 and number 3 is 80 feet. So if you think about it, I'm trying to land in a box is 80 by 80, okay? For you guys to play tennis, that is very close to the size of a tennis court, and it is much too big. I have to make that a lot smaller. If I get the 1 or 3 wire, both will stop me, but I don't want those. Every time I'm landing, I am trying to land on the 2 wire. It's called the target wire. We do that because we're always shooting for perfection. Our safety margin is going to be better. If I try for the 1 wire, I'm bringing that ramp into play. If I go for the 3 wire, I'm bringing no wire into play. So all of my hook to hit this flight deck 10 to 14 feet short of the 2 wire. So my box is not 80 by 80, it's 3 feet by 4 feet. And I'll put my tail hook in that 3 by 4 foot box 95% of the time at daylight and 88% of the time at night. I will do that for one very good reason. I am that good. Actually, I'm better than that good. I'm a naval aviator. By definition, that makes me the best pilot in the Navy. Now, you could find another guy in the yellow hat around here and ask him if he's a pilot. And if he is, go up to him and say, "Are you the best pilot in the Navy?" And he will say he is. He is not. I am. It's an attitude. If we don't believe to our core that we are invincible, then we're not invincible and we should not be here. The kind of flying that we do, second place is not an option. Now that attitude works very good in the Navy. Not so good at home. Trust me, I know when I speak. Okay, let's figure out how do we make all this happen. When we return to the ship, we're going to have 7 to 9 flights, 2 to 4 planes per flight. That's a lot of planes coming back. Everybody's low on fuel. Daytime, we only have enough fuel for 2 passes. Nighttime, 3. It has to be very well choreographed. The air boss up there in the tower does not control it. He just tells us when to land. We figure out how. These cats, each one can put an aircraft in the air every 90 seconds. So between the 2 cats, we can launch a plane every 45 seconds. When the last plane is launched, within 10 seconds, we land the first plane. We don't call it the landing phase, we call it the recovery. We are recovering aircraft that we launched earlier. So we launch them and we recover them. To make all this happen, the flight leaders make it happen. The boss stays out of it. Now, I'm going to give you a scenario. Then I'll be returning to the ship. I'll be a flight leader and I'll have 4 A-7s, that aircraft that's up on the left catapult out there that I flew a lot. I'll be in what's called a fingertip formation. I am here, number 2, number 3, number 4. We're what we call cruising, meaning 10 feet apart, very comfortable. I'm heading for a point we call the initial point, which is the ship is moving through the water. Behind the ship, we have a wake, like everybody else. In the wake, 3 miles back there, at an altitude of 800 feet, there's an imaginary circle. We're going to fly to and through, and that's called the initial point. From there into the carrier's a can pattern. Getting there is what the fun part is. So as I'm descending, heading for that initial point, I will lower my tail hook, and I want to see everybody else's hook come down. And we'll all give each other a visual that we have a good hook. Why are we doing that? These aircraft cost mega $1 million. You'd think they could put a $3.50 light in there that tells us where the hook is. There's no indication in the cockpit. We get a visual, and we never raise it again after we know it's down until we trap. Okay, again, partway down, I need to change the formation. If we can see each other, we will never talk on the radio. We can do everything with hand signals. So as I'm descending, I'll just make a left fist, hold it over here, 1 potato, 2 potato, over here, drop it. I just told 3 to move over, 2 is going to come underneath me and fill in there. Now we're all on the same side. We call that a right echelon. Me, 2, 3, 4. We're still cruising, so we're 10 feet apart. As I'm heading to that initial point, remember 3 miles back there, a rule kicks in. Anytime you're within 3 miles of the ship, you've got to look cool. The crew can see you, and we look cool around the ship all the time. It's an unwritten law. So as I approach the initial point, if my flight has not done it on their own, I will just tap my right shoulder twice, and 2, who is 10 feet out here, he will now move in so that he's 3 to 5 feet from me. Number 3 will come in, number 4 will come in. We'll have all 4 aircraft nice and tight. We're going to head through that initial point. I used to like to hit the initial point at about 300, 350 knots. It's supposed to be 250, and it drives the air boss nuts when you come into the pattern. It's just fun. So I'm going to fly right here, which is right there, and I'm going to be 350-ish, 4 nice, tight-looking aircraft. Now, when I get up here to the bow of the ship, I break us up and start into the pattern. I do that by looking out of my two-man, and I blow him a kiss. It's not that I like him that much. It's a signal. It's called a kiss-off. It means, see you, I'm leaving, and he flies straight ahead. Do I have anybody associated with the Air Force in here? Okay, no apology. We can do an Air Force break, otherwise known as a granny break. Okay? Or I can kiss off and go, which one do you think I'm going to do? Why? It looks cool, and it's all about me. It's showtime. I'm a naval aviator. I got 300 people on the flight deck looking at me. We never pass that up. So I'm going to make a very hard left turn, 90 degrees back, 4 to 5 Gs on the aircraft. I'm going to be heading opposite the ship, of course. When I get in this general area here, I will be slow enough to do what we call go dirty, meaning the wheels comes down, flaps come down, my hook is already down. I slow to approach speed, I descend to 600 feet, and I'm heading for this position, which is 3/4 of a mile up here for an A7. And we call it the 180. The 180 means you have 180 degrees of turn remaining. The 90 degrees. The important one is the 35. From the 35 to the 2-wire, that's the landing. If you get a good setup, landing a high-performance aircraft on a flight deck, relatively steady deck, is a walk in the park. We do it all day long, and it's just fun to be able to do it. Okay, now what 2 did, when my wings came up, every Navy cockpit right here has a clock with a stopwatch on it. He's going to punch it. 12 to 14 seconds later, he kisses off from 3. Then 3 does it to 4. Now we're what we call a trail. I am at the 180. Number 2, number 3, and number 4. But magically now, we have 45 seconds apart. We're going to put a tail hook in that 3x4 foot box every 45 seconds. We'll do that with 17 aircraft in peacetime, with 37 aircraft coming back in combat every 45 seconds somebody lands. Okay, now we're in the pattern. Let's talk about the actual landing. Every pilot has to control 3 variables when you land. Line up, glide slope, airspeed. Line up, we talked about that. Glide slope, we have this gadget. It's called the optical landing system, invented by the British. It revolutionized naval air. Prior to this, landing on a ship was really, really hard. Now, up on the left side of Midway, behind a white helicopter, is Midway's lens. You go up there, press the button, and it'll give you an audio video of how it works. These datum lights right there, they're very bright, they're on all the time. They're blue-green in color. I call them blue-green because I'm a guy. I deal in primary colors. About 2 months ago, I had a very nice lady in the group here tell me they were teal. They probably are, but I can't see me in a ready room telling pilots to keep the ball lined up in the teal ones. Now right there, you can see a stack of amber boxes. Each box has a very bright bulb on it. Over the top of it is a piece of plastic called a Fresnel lens, invented by a Frenchman named Fresnel. And you guys see a Fresnel lens every day of your life. Well, traffic lights now with Fresnel lenses. That's why sometimes you can only see them when you're in certain lanes because they're directional. Lighthouse Fresnel lens. What it's going to do is take those 5 boxes, point it backwards, so I can see it coming this way. We're going to take the middle one and elevate it up at a 3.5 degree angle, and that's my glide slope. So when I get to the 35, and I see this position of this piece of equipment for the first time, the only light I want to be able to see is that one, and I know it's that one because it's even with the datums. And if that's what I see coming down, I am coming down at 3.5 degree angle. If I get slightly above the glide slope, this ball will start to look like it's going up. If I get low, it'll come down. That's the one you need for the 2-wire. Now these lights here, the wave-off lights, I'm just pointing them out. I'm going to talk about those in a second, okay? Now, when I first see this thing, in an A7, I'm about a half a mile from the ship. If you looked at a cross-section of the lens, this is what the beam would look like. And it's 24 feet. From there to there, 24 feet. Now, if I'm down here, I see a low ball. From up here, I see a high ball. I need to be in this, but the problem is that's too wide. Because the closer you get to the ship, it's like a flashlight, it narrows. And when you get to the ramp area with 3 to 5 seconds of flight time remaining, that beam is now 18 inches wide. So if I let my airplane move up or down 9 inches, that ball moves. If it moves out of the middle, I don't get the 2-wire. So your tolerances for everything we do, it's tighter and tighter the closer you get to the ship. Okay, now this is what it actually looks like. That one's perfect. It's probably one of mine. My ball is perfect. That ball, by the way, we nicknamed that the meatball. All nicknames in naval air are food related. This is just the first one, meatball. Now my wingman, not so cool. It's low and it's red. We put a red lens on the bottom cell and warn the pilot, come on, dude, make a correction, get back up to here, or we may not let you land. Now let me see if I can put this in perspective. As I mentioned, I have over 1,000 landings in my career. I have never, ever, ever seen a red ball. At our level, we will fly a quarter ball high or a quarter ball low, all the way down to touchdown. If you can't do that consistently, you're not going to be here very long. Okay? Now, to help us, right here are a bunch of guys called landing signal officers or LSOs. Many, many years ago, I used to be one of them. By the time you get assigned that job, you've demonstrated you can fly an airplane reasonably well. But the way you get your skills, you stand where they are, watching thousands of landings. With a qualified guy here talking in your ear. But by the time you get qualified, I have better visual cues looking at him than he has looking at the ship. He has to wait for something to change to make a correction. If he's looking at this picture, he's not going to make any correction. When the ball starts going up, oops, I need to make a correction. I can tell before the ball goes up that it is going to go up. I can tell by the attitude of his aircraft, the sound of his engine, how far he is above the horizon, if the deck is moving, just a whole bunch of little things that gives me more information than he has. So if they need some assistance, we will do it. Rarely in daylight when they don't need it. Nighttime, we talk a lot more. It's more dangerous, more difficult. Okay, the other thing the LSO does, you cannot land if the deck is not ready. That's called a foul deck. How does that happen? Let's say the guy that landed in front of you didn't get out of the way fast enough. You can't land. The boss gets 100 traps on a 1-wire, on a 2-wire. We're going to pull it and change it. Can't land. The LSO in his left hand has a device, radio, looks like a telephone. In his right hand, he has a pistol grip with a trigger on it, and we call that the pickle. So far, we got a meatball and we got a pickle. We got a trend here. Now, when you get to the wave-off point, if the deck is not ready for you or your approach stinks, he is going to squeeze that trigger. Those red lights I pointed out are going to pulsate, and he is going to say 3 times with a very firm voice, wave off, wave off, wave off. You cannot land under any condition. You don't know who or what's on the flight deck. Okay, the last thing the LSO does is every landing we do is graded. Every landing. Why would they do that? We're a bunch of grown men. We've demonstrated we can land some pretty cool airplanes on a flight deck. Why do we need to be graded? Well, they found out a long time ago that naval aviators hate criticism. We are extremely competitive, and we have very fragile egos. So they said, let's grade them. Now let's make a list. And then let's put the list on a board so everybody can see it. Nobody wants to be on the bottom of the list, so everybody tries harder. What's the end result? Better landings. Trust me, if you ever want to get a bunch of naval aviators to do anything, make a list. It works every time. Okay? All right, let's do the final variable, and we'll get to the fun stuff. Airspeed. Naval Air, we haven't controlled airspeed in 30 years. We control a thing called angle of attack, which sounds complicated, but it's not. If you drive your car, put your hand out the window parallel to the ground, and the wind hits your fingertips, you don't feel any resistance. Your angle of attack is 0. Now let's say this is the wing and I pull it up, and I have an angle that the wind wind is hitting the wing. There's a vane on the airplane that measures it, transmits it to an instrument in the cockpit. If I move my nose around, that instrument changes. The beauty of it is there is only one optimum angle of attack per type of aircraft to land. By that I mean that F-14 is a type. They land at their angle of attack. This F-4, they've got their own. The A-7 up on left cat, 17.5 degrees. They're going to tell me what it is in that gadget. It's called the angle of attack indexer. It sits right here. The glare shield is here. It's right here. It's about this tall, about that wide. It has 3 lights on it, a green arrow pointing down. My nose is too high. Red, my nose is too flat. I want that. This is a test question. It's round, it's yellow, and it has a hole in the middle. Exactly. Donut. Now we got a meatball, we got a pickle, and we got a donut. Everything is food related. Now let's talk about the tolerances of the donut. 2 degrees. If I move my nose up more than 2 or down more than 2, I lose the donut. Why is that important? The attitude of the aircraft is just as important as the vertical. Here's the airplane, center of gravity of the airplane. The airplane moves around that fulcrum, okay? So I'm going to exaggerate this. Let's say I have a little bit of a low ball. Instead of making the proper correction, I decide I think I'll just pull the nose up and sneak over the 1 wire and get to the 2 wire. Is that going to work? No. Why? Pulling your nose up does not pull your nose up. The control surface is on your tail. It pushes your tail down. Connected to your tail is your hook. So if you're trying to miss the 1 wire, you just guarantee the 1 wire by lowering your hook. The proper corrections are throttle, power, thrust, controls, sink rate. If I'm low, I add power, decreases my rate of descent. If I'm high, I reduce power, increases my rate of descent. So this hand on the throttle controls the ball. This hand on a stick controls the nose, which is airspeed, and they work together, always opposites. I pull back on this, I'll push it forward on that. So that's the way you do it. So if you're trying to nurse the ball around with your nose, it's not going to work. Okay, so we're all qualified. Let's get a couple of landings here. Oops. F-18 just touched down, nose wheels off the deck, main mounts are spinning up. Just picked up a wire, and those LSOs right there are giving him a grade. I forgot to tell you that we use the grade to bet a lot. Money changes hands on a lot of landings. Sometimes you have squadron competitions, one squadron against another squadron, and trust me, that's not for $10. There's a big pot of money in that, and you don't want to be the guy that screws it up. So is this kid going to get any money from what you can see? What wire is he on? He's on the 1 wire. Target wire is 2. Now think about it. I'm trying to land a box that's 3 feet by 4 feet, and he's missed it by 30 feet. No money for that kid. Same airplane, roll it out. See the nozzles are closed? And people frequently ask, can you inadvertently get more than 1 wire at a time? No. When you get a wire, everything goes up over all the other ones, so you don't have to worry about getting more than 1 wire. But those nozzles are closed because he is at full power, even though he has a wire. Why would we do a silly thing like that? What if I didn't get a wire? The nomenclature is if you touch down and pick up a wire, that's called a trap. If your wheels touch the deck but no wire, that's a bolter. Our assumption is on every landing, bolter, unsuccessful landing, because you have an aircraft that is underpowered coming down, you've got to get it to takeoff power going up. You have about 480 feet of deck left, and that's about 3 seconds. So when we touch down, we add full power. If you miss the wires, just keep going. Get to the end of the deck, take off attitude, come around, make another landing, touch down like this young man is here with full power on, and your harness is locking, and he's sitting there with full power. Can you have it both ways? Yes. When you pick up a wire, that flight's over. You can be at full power till next Tuesday. You're not going anywhere. That wire will overpower your engine and stop you 340 feet up the deck. So that's why it's safe for us to add power on every landing. It'll either trap or bolt. But now you're here, and you're going to get out of the way because 45 seconds behind you is your wingman trying to land. You only have 35 to get out of Dodge because they need 10 seconds to wave him off. So this is what's going to happen in the cockpit. You're going to touch down, add full power. Your harness is locking, which is telling you that you're going to wire. That's 2 good pieces of information. You're going to wire, flight's over, and you remember to lock your harness. Because if you don't, the airplane stops, and you don't. You become instrument panel looking really stupid. Trust me, every airplane I flew had one seat. All of them. Who's going to rat me out that I forgot to lock my harness? See this line? Underneath the tower is a camera. They video every landing we do. So when you're going up the flight deck, wrapped around like this, that's being recorded. That night in your ready room on a closed circuit TV, there's going to be a loop. And guess who the loop is? You wrapped around your instrument panel. That'll probably be there for about 2 days. So every time you go in your ready room, there you are looking stupid. Try not to do it. So here's what really happens. Touchdown, full power, harness locks, throttle on idle, look out the right window. You're going to see a young man in a yellow shirt. He's called a director. Super talented people. He will have both hands in the air like this or like this. Either way, it means the same thing. He is reminding you, do not put your brakes on. You need that plane to roll backwards, and it will because a heavy wire is falling down. That pulls you backwards 7 to 10 feet. He's looking at your hook and your wire, and he wants to see disengagement, at which point you can then raise your hook. If you have the wire, he won't let you raise the hook. So as soon as that happens, he then is doing this. He's going to do that, at which point I'll raise my hook, push my throttle forward, step on my left brake, because it's tricycle gear and I'm rolling backwards, so if I step on this brake, the nose goes to the right, which is what I want. Fold my wings, raise my flaps, engage my nose gear steering, head to the foul line. I can do all of that in 5 or 6 seconds. When I cross the foul line, I know I will have crossed it because they will give me a very hard left turn, and I know I am now clear of the landing area. And if I want to, I can count 1 potato, 2 potato, 3 potato. I get to 10, I will hit whoosh, and it's my limit. If I look at the clock, it'll be 43 to 45 seconds. And we'll do that all day long. It's really a lot of fun. Okay, let's get to the fun stuff. Get a video in here. Okay, I'm going to stop this for a minute because there's a little thing. I want you to know, you guys that came in halfway through this thing, the ship is not going straight. It's going left to right because of the angle deck. And if you'll notice the horizon, you'll see the pilot making corrections all the way down. However, the glide slope will be rock solid. You will not see him deviate at all from the glide slope. Now he is, but it is so small, the corrections that he is making, you can't even see. Now they've done studies about how many corrections we make from when we pick this guy up here on final. And we make actually 300 plus corrections in the cockpit. Tiny, tiny throttle, tiny, tiny stick, all the way down to touchdown. Now, this landing is perfect. I would claim it as mine, but it's in that S3 back there, which is a really ugly airplane. I would never fly a plane that ugly. I have an image to maintain, and boy, that's not it. Okay, so let's go ahead and start this guy. If you'll notice to the left, you'll see the meatball is right in the center. He's right on center line. Nice conditions, though. Yeah, I haven't seen this maybe 10 times in my life. The ship is always moving. Watch the meatball go right off the side. Pretty cool, huh? By the way, I have applications back here if anybody would like to sign up for Naval Air. I mean, this is fun, right? When I signed up, they told me the bar was on the fantail and the casino was on the forecastle. They lied. Okay. All right, now here's a cool one. This is an F-18 coming into what we call a break. Remember, if you guys have started here, we come up alongside the ship, we snap 90 degrees to turn, and we do a hard 360 degree, plus 13 degrees to the landing. I'm going to walk you through it because it's kind of fun, little idiosyncrasies. This guy is turning too soon. I wasn't there, but I know exactly why. He's late, and he's last. Never be the last plane to land. If you're late, cut out anybody else in the pattern. You need to make them last, or you're going to be on the bridge explaining to the captain why you kept the ship into the wind. Okay, here we go. Snap turn. Oops. Back enough far enough. I fly airplanes there. 90 degrees mag, 4 to 5 Gs. Speed brakes just went down that little shutter. You'll see him look over his shoulder numerous times because he needs to stay at a proper distance from the ship, which is usually, depending on the airplane, 3/4, half a mile to 3/4 of a mile. That shutter right there is when he went dirty. The wheels came down, the flaps came down, the hook's already down. He's slowing to approach speed. And prior to this, that airplane has been flying like a Maserati. Very light touch to it, very responsive. Now it's flying like a Volkswagen. Once you make it dirty, it's heavy, and it flies completely different than it did when it was clean. He's at the 90 now. The ship's still in the house, doesn't have any definition. That's Davey talk from backing up. Okay, he's at the 35 now. You can now see the meatball. You can see the lineup. He's making his final corrections. When he rolls his wings level, he will be on final, 300 feet above the water. And if you'll notice his head, he never looks back inside the cockpit. Everything he needs to land is out there in front of him. Three things: meatball, line-up, donut, meatball, line-up, donut. Keep all those three things where they should be. Fly that sucker down onto the two-wire. And they got a good chance of getting the money. That's the important thing. Now, he lands a few feet right. No, not necessary, but watch his head. Looking for the yellow shirt. Seriously, this is really fun. I do have applications back here. If any gals or guys would like to try it. Okay, this next one is kind of cool. It's an F-18 selfie. 2.5 seconds, full stop. Looks to the right for the yellow shirt. Thumbs up. That thumbs up is not asking the crew to applaud his landing. Trust me, they don't care. That thumbs up is telling a chief petty officer that's out of your field of view that the status of that aircraft is up. Good. We don't need to do anything to it. We can recycle it for the next event. When we get out of the airplane up on the bow, 35 minutes later, that plane is going to have to be towed back here, fueled, armed, serviced, and the new crew is going to be staying there to get into it. A lot has to happen in 35 minutes. If I have a problem with my aircraft, I have a 5-digit code that I can give the chief petty officer a rough idea of what part of my airplane is a problem. If I go down on a 5, I just told him I have an engine issue. Thumbs down to 3 hydraulics, thumbs down to 2 communications. He will send the proper guy up to the bow, so when I get out of my airplane, standing there is the right guy to talk to about the airplane. If he can fix it, we will. If not, we take it to an elevator, drop it to the hangar deck, bring another airplane up. Everything happens in 35 minutes, okay? Now this next landing is terrible. You guys are gonna think it's cool. To me, it's a piece of junk. He's underpowered. He's working the nose, trying to nurse the airplane up like we talked about. And right before touchdown, you watch the nose go up, thinking he's gonna get over the one wire, and he doesn't. This is an F-35, our newest strike fighter. He's over controlling the aircraft. You shouldn't see that flappers, ailerons going around. Watch right at touchdown. Nose goes up. Is it something I said?
Yeah.
Don't you understand how fragile my ego is? I don't take rejection well at all. My boss told me if I keep doing this, they're going to cut my pay in half. Good luck with that. Okay, now, you guys who are thinking about naval air, you should have waited for this one. Because you're going to find out you do this at night. Now, those of you that are more astute than others will notice a slight difference between that graphic and this graphic. Where's the horizon? Where's the ship? Where's the wake? Where's all the stuff? There, gone. Night landings are the most difficult land of landing there is by anyone, anywhere. This is a computer-generated picture of what it looks like. You can tell because it's perfect. In the real world, every 10th light is out. A bunch of others have got gunk or grease all over them. It's going to look much more like that than this. But again, notice there is no horizon. This is your horizon and it's moving. There's no wake. There's nothing passing me. So I don't have any relative motion. So my airplane feels like it's stationary. But I'm moving at 160 miles an hour, but I don't have that sensation. You're playing a video game. That's what it feels like. Now the good news is at night, we don't have to land every 45 seconds. We get a whole minute. We also don't do a circling approach over the water. We do a straight in. They're going to put us back behind the ship. The first plane is going to be at 25 miles, 15,000 feet. Next one, 16, 17, 18. We call that marshalling. We're going to stay there, wait for approach times. They'll give us approach times that are 1 minute apart. And that's what gives us a 1 minute interval coming down. And while we're holding there, there's two things you concentrate on. Maximum conservation of fuel. At nighttime, we only have enough fuel for 3 passes. If you're not aboard on your third pass, you got 12 to 15 minutes of fuel left in that airplane, and you're going to figure out how to solve that problem. The other thing we always think about is, I should have gone in the Air Force. They don't do this stupid stuff. Okay? When I leave there, I will call pushing. From push to jab is 7.5 minutes, and it's the most important 7.5 minutes of your life. You must focus. You must concentrate. Everything out here is meaningless. The only thing I care about is my instruments. We are all very good instrument pilots of necessity. When I leave there, I'll transmit on a radio 301, pushing 3.0. I just know who I am. I'm Lift Marshal, and I have 3,000 pounds of gas. I will descend at exactly 250 knots, 4,000 feet per minute synchron. That's important because if we all do it the same, we keep that 1 minute. If I get slow and he gets fast, we don't have the minute. So to do that, we all have to be exactly the same. I'll descend down to 1,200 feet, at which point I will level off. I will fly up to 10 miles from the ship, and at 10 miles I go dirty. The wheels come down, the flaps come down, my hook's already down. Slow to approach speed and get comfortable with a heavy flying airplane. It's different than I've been flying. I will fly up to 3 miles, and at 3 miles I'll start down the glide slope, still on instruments. You don't look out there. If you do, you'll see lights, but there's no definition to them, so they just confuse you. Stay on your instruments. And I'll come down my glide slope, 3.5-degree glide slope. And when I get to 3/4 of a mile here, there's a young man on a Chev that's been watching me on radar. He's going to transmit on the radio, 371, 3/4 of a mile, on center line, on glide slope, call the ball. That's the first time I look out the front window, and I better see this picture. If the ball's not in the middle, fix it. If the lineup is off, fix it. I got about 18 seconds of flying remaining. I'm going to answer that call at 301, Corsair ball, 25. I just told them who I am, 301. What I am, a Corsair, so they sent the equipment for me. Ball means I see the beat ball. If I don't, I say the word Clara. 25 means I have 2,500 pounds of gas, which is enough for 3 passes to the 97. For the next 15 to 18 seconds, there's only 3 things that matter in your life. Beat ball, line up, donut. Beat ball, line up, donut. Beat ball, breathe, keep breathing. Beat ball, line up, donut. Beat ball, beat ball, beat ball, touchdown at full power. Your harness locks, so you know you're going to wire. The adrenaline rush in the cockpit is enormous at night. You add that power and that harness locks. It's the second best feeling in the world. What's so funny about that? I never understand why people always laugh at that. Okay, now when I start this, it's going to look like the ship is going nuts. It is moving, but not that bad. But I want you to focus on where's the beat ball? Right in the middle. Where's the lineup? Right where it should be, even though it's in the middle of the night. Why? There is no plan B. You have to be able to do this 88% of the time. Thank you. You guys who are thinking about signing up will probably reconsider it. Good thinking. Okay, here's a cool landing. This is a different ship, and that's 4-wire. It's an E-2 airplane. The landing was normal. Pilots at full power, standard procedure, but right there the wire broke. This is not good. Whoops. What, do you think I was going to show you a crash? And we don't do that. But this landing is worth a few minutes on. And that happened to me in the kind of aircraft that I flew. I would have had to eject. I would have lost too much airspeed. My wings are too small to recover. My plane's going into the water like a dart. But I have an ejection seat. I can get out. They don't. That's a bailout airplane. There's 5 people on that plane. Pilot, co-pilot, 3 guys in the back on radars. Okay? When the pilot landed, he went to full power standard procedure. When the wire broke, both he and the co-pilot knew it immediately. The co-pilot raised the wheels, reduced the drag, reset the flaps for maximum lift. The pilot knew he could not pull the nose up, or he would have done what we call stall, meaning the airplane's not flying anymore, and it takes on the characteristics of a falling brick, and he would have killed 5 people. But he also knew the flight deck was 60 feet off the water, so he counterintuitively pushed the nose over to go for the water. Do you have any idea what it took to make that kind of decision in that environment in a split second? Now, why did he do it? Because he owns that airplane. It is a part of him. He can feel it. It's a living item that he is a part of. He got so low the tail hook actually hit the water twice that you saw him nurse it, come up with a positive rate of climb. When it was all over, he and the co-pilot were awarded air medals for a device like this, which is pretty cool. But it was really done. We went in, we cleaned up the cockpit, we issued that new flight suits, and they were all ready to go for the next day. Okay. All right, now what happens if you can't land normally? Something's wrong with your airplane and you can't do a normal landing, and there's no land. We fly in the middle of the Indian Ocean, 1,000 miles from land. This is it. You're going to land here. We have you covered. This thing's called the barricade. If it looks like a net, that's what it is. That top cable is 24 feet in the air. Those verticals are nylon straps 4 feet apart. You're going to do a normal landing, except you don't go to full power. That flight's over. It's going to roll up into it. You're going to drape over you, stop you at a couple hundred feet. Normally, it will do minimal damage to the aircraft, crinkle up maybe the leading edge of the wing, and we have guys that can fix that overnight. Now, this rarely happens, but I do have one to show you. It's an older one. It's 1972 Vietnam A-7 aircraft flying off of Riscale, all of which apply to me. I was there in 72 flying a Vietnam A-7 off of Riscale. But this is a guy named Denny. He took a missile hit to his right wing. It didn't detonate, but it did a number on the wing. He couldn't lower his flaps. So he was going to be 40 miles per hour too fast. So instead of landing at 160, he was going to land at 200. We felt that would exceed the stress of the hook, so if he landed, it just ripped the hook on the airplane and dribbled in the water. So we decided to take a loop down and into the barricade. There's a barricade coming up. The crew will do their final checks. The location of the barricade is right about where we are now. It's usually just aft of the last wire. The crew will clear. Denny's already started his approach. Now keep in mind, this is a short approach because he's so fast. Pretty cool, huh? Now watch over here, you're going to see 3 young men, and watch what they do. Those young men would take a bullet for us. Their job is to get us out of that cockpit no matter what. That A-7 nose strut did collapse, went right up into the engine. We should have had a burning inferno on that flight deck. Had we done so, they'd have walked into that fireball to get Denny out of there. Now here they are leaving the area. There's Denny, and they surround them like a quarterback in a pocket, and they take us out of the blast zone, putting their bodies between us and the airplane. So if we do get a residual cook-off, they take the heat, they take the blast, protecting us. Their gear will take it, ours will not. And when we clear the area, they come back and help their shipmates. Which brings me to my last, but I think most important subject of this whole presentation I'm trying to make here. If you take anything off Midway today, take off what I'm going to tell you now. Before I do that, is there anybody in this group that is current or former enlisted? Nobody? Yes, sir. Ma'am? What service? Army? Good for you. Any Navy in here? Come on, fess up. Somebody's going to rat you out. Okay, when this ship was operational, we had a crew of 4,500 people. That Nimitz-class carrier across the bay there, well, in fact, that is the Nimitz over there, has a crew of 5,500, and 20% of that crew is female. They do the same job the guys do, just as good or better. But the average age of this ship of the enlisted crew back in the day and today is 19 and a half to 20 years old. Teenagers. Many of them you wouldn't let drive your car to the prom. They're the people that are making that ship run like a fine-tuned watch. You have no concept of how complex and capable these vessels are. Multiple high-demand things are going on 24/7 over there. Just the people that work up here on this flight deck, it is the most hazardous environment you could possibly be in. And they're up here 14 hours a day. And to them, it's just another day in the office. Now, when I was flying combat in Vietnam off of USS Kitty Hawk, I'd come out of my ready room over there, come back to my airplane. Standing in front of it would be a young man in a brown shirt. He's called a plane captain. His mission in life was to make sure my airplane was ready for me to fly. When I would approach him, we always saluted as a mutual sign of courtesy and respect. I always shook his hand, and I asked him the same question on every flight. Is it ready? I want one answer. Yes, sir. If I get that answer, I don't question them, I don't doubt them. If that 19 and a half, 20-year-old kid tells me that airplane is good to go, it's good to go. Now, they would launch me off the front end of Kitty Hawk, and I would be loaded with bombs and sidewinders, 20 millimeter on the lethal flying machine. Now, let me put that in perspective. When I am home, not deployed, I am a husband, I'm a father, I go to all the Little League games, I go to all the recitals, I go to all the cheerleading contests, I do all the things that all of you normal, average, everyday people do every day of your life. But when I get launched off the front end of the ship, I am not that person anymore. I am now a hunter, and I'm looking for something that's moving, and I'm going to destroy it. And then I come back to the ship and I land, and I get all the accolades, I get all the pats on the back. You know where the 48th Hemisphere goes without 5,500 teenagers? Nowhere. Without them, nothing happens. But with them, anything happens. They are the heart and soul of every vessel. So I'm hoping when you're walking around out there and you see somebody in uniform, male, female, any uniform, Army, Navy, Coast Guard, Marine, whatever you see, just remember that old Paul. Forget the old part. Paul asked you to walk up to them, offer to shake their hand. You only have to say one word, thanks. They've earned it, they'll feel good, and I bet you feel pretty good too. Now, in conclusion here, I am a retired naval aviator. For 29 years, I had the honor and privilege of flying with the finest pilots this country can produce. As I mentioned, I have 1,010 traps, carrier landings. I also have 1,010 catapults. The Navy really likes you to keep those numbers even for obvious reasons. I got a little over 300 combat missions in Vietnam. Sometimes, see, back in the day, I used to be somebody. I tell everybody I was Maverick, only better. Now I'm a docent out here, and my wife, who is sitting right there, refers to this as elder daycare for retired Navy pilots. I've been married to that woman for 60 years almost.
Woo!
All right, I'm finished. I'm running out of babble here. Anybody got any questions? All right, have some fun on Midway. However, before you leave, let me give you a little administrative advice. The island tour, if you haven't been up in that superstructure, it's one of the highlights of the ship. But the line to it closes at 4 o'clock. So if you're not in line by 4, you're not going up because they take everybody in the line. So you got to be there before that to get up there. But it is one of the highlights of the ship. And there's another guy on forward up here. He's not as good looking as I am, and he's got lots of jokes. But he's telling you about how the catapults work. And for you guys who came partway through it, I'm being relieved by the esteemed gentleman over there in the yellow hat. I've heard he will do a song and dance at the end of his. All right,
Great, thank you.